Naya Blackwood pressed her fingers against her tired eyes, watching the endless stream of data flow across her screens in the My communications hub of Aurora 7. The deep space station hung in the void between star systems, serving as humanity's most remote listening post. At 2:47 a.m. station time, she was the only soul awake in the entire facility, surrounded by the gentle hum of processors and the distant whisper of recycled air. Her coffee had gone cold hours ago, but she couldn't bring herself to leave her post. Something had been nagging at her all week, a faint signal that appeared and vanished like a ghost in the static. Tonight, it had grown stronger, more persistent, as if someone across the galaxy was desperately trying to reach anyone who would listen. The signal broke through again, clearer this time, and Naya's breath caught in her throat. It wasn't the mechanical precision of a distress beacon or the formal protocols of military communication. This was raw, emotional, filled with a pain that transcended language barriers. Even before her translation algorithms began working, she could hear the heartbreak in those alien syllables. "Please," the voice whispered through the static, and Naya's translation software slowly began parsing the words. "If anyone can hear this, we are the Velani of the Andoris system. Our world burns. Our children cry in the night. The Korath Empire tears our families apart like morning mist before the wind." Naya leaned forward, her heart racing. The Korath Empire, she'd heard whispers about them in intercepted military transmissions. A conquering force that swept through peaceful systems, enslaving populations and stripping worlds bare. But this wasn't a military report or strategic assessment. This was someone's anguish, pouring out into the endless dark. "My beloved Thera," the voice continued, and Naya realized she was listening to what might be someone's final message to their loved one. "I do not know if you escaped with little Mirren when the ships came. I pray to the ancient stars that you are safe, somewhere beyond their reach. But if you hear this, know that my love crosses any distance the void can create." The transmission cut to static, and Naya found herself wiping away tears she hadn't realized were falling. In 15 years of monitoring deep space communications, she had intercepted countless messages, military orders, trade negotiations, scientific data. But nothing had ever reached into her chest and squeezed her heart like this stranger's love song to someone who might already be dead. She replayed the message, this time focusing on the technical aspects. The signal originated from the Andoris system, nearly 600 light-years away. The Velani appeared to be using an obsolete broadcast system, probably jury-rigged from civilian equipment. They were throwing their voices into space with no idea if anyone was listening, driven by nothing but hope and desperation. As she analyzed the data, more fragments came through. Different voices now, a mother calling to her scattered children, an elder sharing final wisdom, lovers separated by the chaos of war. Each message was a piece of a larger tragedy, the death cry of an entire civilization. But it was the original voice that called to her most strongly. She began to recognize his speech patterns, the way he constructed his sentences. His name was Kellen, she learned from context clues, and he was a teacher or storyteller of some kind. His messages weren't just to Thera, he was broadcasting hope to anyone who might hear. "We Velani have always believed that love creates bridges across any distance," Kellen's voice said in one transmission. "We are artists, gardeners, keepers of stories and songs. We have no weapons because we never needed them. Our beauty was in our gentleness. But the Korath see only weakness where we see strength." Naya found herself working through the night, documenting every message, building a picture of the Velani people and their plight. They were refugees now, scattered across space in stolen ships and damaged transports, trying to regroup while the Korath Empire consumed their homeworld. As dawn approached on Aurora 7, she faced a choice. Protocol demanded she forward alien communications to Earth Command for evaluation. But protocols were written for military intelligence and trade disputes, not for love letters and lullabies, broadcast by a dying people. She thought about Kellen, somewhere in the dark between stars, still broadcasting his messages of love to a woman who might never hear them. She thought about Thera and little Mirren, fleeing through space with nothing but hope to sustain them. She thought about the Korath Empire, treating these gentle people like resources to be harvested. The choice wasn't really a choice at all. Naya opened a new file and began composing her own message, using the same frequencies Kellen had been broadcasting on. Her hands trembled slightly as she typed, knowing she was about to break every regulation she'd sworn to uphold. "This is Naya Blackwood of the Terran Deep Space Monitoring Station Aurora 7, she began. "I have received your transmissions. You are not alone in the void. Humanity has heard your call, and we are listening." She paused, considering her next words carefully. Earth had strict non-interference policies regarding alien conflicts. But there were ways around policies, especially for someone who understood the communication networks as well as she did. "I cannot promise official government assistance," she continued, "but I can promise that your story will be heard by those who might help. There are humans who understand the value of protecting families, of preserving beauty in an ugly universe. Hold on to hope. Kellen of the Villani. Your love for Thera shines like a beacon across the dark." She transmitted the message and sat back, her heart pounding. She had just committed an act that could end her career, but for the first time in months, she felt truly alive. Sometimes the right choice and the legal choice were different things, and she was done pretending otherwise. Over the following hours, as her shift ended and the day crew arrived, Naya began reaching out through unofficial channels. The galaxy was full of mercenaries, volunteers, and idealists who operated outside official sanction. If Earth's government wouldn't help the Villani, perhaps Earth's people would. She was about to discover that sometimes the most powerful force in the universe wasn't weapons or politics. It was the simple human impulse to answer a call for help, especially when that call was wrapped in love. Jackson. Rivera was nursing his third whiskey at Murphy's Bar on Titan Station when the encrypted message reached his personal communicator. The dimly lit establishment catered to freight haulers, smugglers, and others who lived in the spaces between legal and illegal. At 32, Jackson had become a regular fixture there, drowning memories that refused to stay buried. His weathered hands, scarred from years of piloting through asteroid fields and combat zones, trembled slightly as he opened the message. The sender was anonymous, but the routing code suggested it came from deep space monitoring stations, the kind of places where secrets were currency and favors were more valuable than credits. Volunteer pilots needed for humanitarian rescue mission. Villani refugees under attack by Korath Empire. Unofficial operation. Discreet inquiries only. Contact Aurora 7 Station, frequency 847.3. The name Korath hit him like a physical blow. Jackson's whiskey glass crashed to the bar as memories flooded back his wife Elena's laugh, his daughter Sophie's first steps, the corporate security forces that had gunned them down during the labor uprising on New Cardiff. The Korath Empire hadn't pulled those triggers, but they'd supplied the weapons, the ships, the cold efficiency that turned families into casualties. "You okay there, Rivera?" Murphy asked, his cybernetic eye whirring as it focused on Jackson's pale face. "Yeah," Jackson lied, dropping credits on the bar. "Just remembered something I need to do." An hour later, he sat in his ship's cramped cockpit, the Wandering Star powered down in a maintenance bay. The vessel was a modified freight hauler, its cargo holds converted into living space, its military-grade engines hidden behind civilian plating. Like her owner, she appeared unremarkable but carried hidden depths. Jackson activated his long-range communicator and broadcast on the specified frequency. "This is independent pilot Jackson Rivera, requesting information about the Vallani situation. The response came quickly, and the voice that answered made his breath catch. It was soft, melodic, with an underlying strength that spoke of someone who'd seen pain but refused to be broken by it. "This is Aurora 7, Naya Blackwood speaking. Thank you for responding. Pilot Rivera. Can you hold for secure channel?" Affirmative. The encryption kicked in, and suddenly her voice was crystal clear, as if she were sitting beside him in the cockpit. "I need to know why you're volunteering for this, Mr. Rivera. It's dangerous, it's probably illegal, and there's no official backing." Jackson found himself being more honest than he'd been with anyone in years. "Because 3 years ago, I lost my family to corporate security forces armed with Korath weapons. Because I've been looking for a reason to get up in the morning ever since. Because someone needs to answer when people call for help." There was silence on the channel for a long moment, then a soft intake of breath. "I'm sorry about your family. I lost someone too. My brother Marcus was killed in a mining accident when safety regulations were ignored to meet quotas. The company covered it up, said it was his fault for not following procedures. How long ago? 5 years. I still hear his voice sometimes, laughing at my terrible jokes." Her voice wavered slightly. "I suppose that's why these Vallani transmissions affect me so much. All these people calling out to loved ones they might never see again." Jackson leaned back in his pilot's seat, feeling a connection he hadn't experienced since Elena's death. This woman understood loss, understood the hollow ache that never quite went away. "Tell me about the mission." For the next hour, Naya briefed him on everything she'd learned about the Vallani situation. Her passion was evident in every word. This wasn't just duty for her, it was personal. She'd been intercepting messages from scattered Vallani ships for weeks, building a network of communication between separated families, offering hope to people who had nothing left but each other. "The main group of refugees is gathered near the Kepler Nebula," she explained. "About 15,000 civilians in ships that were never meant for long-term habitation. They're running out of supplies. Life support is failing on some vessels, and Korath hunter groups are closing in. How many volunteers do we have?" "Honestly? Right now, it's mostly just you and me. I've sent out feelers through various channels, but this kind of operation ... it requires people willing to risk everything for strangers." Jackson smiled for the first time in months. "You'd be surprised how many people are looking for a reason to matter again. Give me 48 hours to make some calls." Over the next 2 days, Jackson reached out to contacts across the outer colonies, former military pilots working as civilians, freight haulers with hidden military modifications, even a few reformed pirates who owed him favors. To his surprise, nearly everyone he approached agreed to join the mission. When he reported back to Naya, her excitement was infectious. "Jackson, this is incredible. I've been coordinating with other monitoring stations, and we have volunteers coming from everywhere. There's a woman named Zara Okafar on Mars who's organizing supply ships. A group of medics from the Centauri colonies are offering their services. It's like people were just waiting for someone to give them a worthy cause. When do we meet?" "There's a briefing at Waystation Echo in the neutral zone tomorrow. Can you make it?" "I'll be there." Waystation Echo was exactly the kind of place where questionable meetings happened. A ramshackle trading post built into a converted asteroid, populated by merchants, mercenaries, and people who preferred to avoid too much official attention. Jackson docked the wandering star and made his way to the specified meeting room, wondering what kind of woman could inspire this level of response from complete strangers. He found his answer when he walked into the briefing room and saw her. Naya Blackwood was not what he'd expected. She was tall and graceful, with dark skin and intelligent brown eyes that seemed to see everything. Her black hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and she wore the kind of functional clothing favored by people who worked with their hands. But it was her presence that struck him most. She radiated a quiet confidence and compassion that made everyone in the room lean forward when she spoke. "Thank you all for coming," she began, her voice carrying easily through the room despite its softness. "I know this seems impossible. We're talking about crossing half the galaxy to help people most of us have never heard of. But I've been listening to their voices for weeks now, and I can tell you that the Vellani are worth saving." She activated a holographic display showing star charts and refugee convoy routes. But then she did something unexpected. She played one of Killen's transmissions, translated into Standard. "My beloved Thera, another day passes without word of you and Mirren. I tell myself you are safe, that your clever mind found a way to escape the burning cities. Tonight I taught the children on our ship about the constellation of the eternal lovers, how they chose to be transformed into stars rather than live apart. I pray we will not share their fate, but if we do, know that my love will shine across any distance." The room fell silent. Jackson felt his throat tighten as memories of Elena surfaced, but this time they didn't bring only pain. This time they reminded him why love was worth fighting for. After the briefing, as volunteers clustered around charts and supply lists, Jackson approached Naya. Up close, she was even more striking, but it was the gentle sadness in her eyes that drew him. "That was beautifully done," he said, "making it personal, helping people understand what we're really fighting for." She looked up at him, and he felt something shift in his chest, a warmth he'd thought was gone forever. "You're the pilot from Titan Station, Jackson Rivera, guilty as charged. And you're the woman who's going to save 15,000 refugees with nothing but hope and stubborn determination." A smile tugged at the corners of her mouth. "Don't forget the part where we probably break several interstellar laws and risk starting a diplomatic incident. The best parts of any good plan?" They stood there for a moment, the noise of the meeting fading around them. Jackson found himself memorizing details, the way her eyes crinkled slightly when she smiled, the graceful way she moved her hands when she talked, the fierce intelligence that burned in her gaze. "Can I buy you dinner?" he asked, surprising himself with the question. "I mean, to discuss mission details. And because I haven't had a real conversation with someone in months, and you seem like someone worth talking to, I'd like that," she said, and the warmth in her voice made something in his chest unfurl like a flower turning toward sunlight. As they walked toward the station's small restaurant, Jackson realized that somewhere between volunteering for an impossible mission and meeting this remarkable woman, he'd found something he'd thought was lost forever, a reason to hope for tomorrow. Zara Okafor stood in the cargo bay of the converted hospital ship Healing Dawn, watching teams of volunteers load medical supplies and refugee housing modules. The massive vessel hummed with activity as engineers, medics, and pilots prepared for humanity's most ambitious rescue operation. As the mission's logistics coordinator, Zara had spent the past month transforming a ragtag collection of volunteers into something resembling an organized fleet dot at 45. She was older than most of the volunteers, her silver-streaked hair and laugh lines marking her as someone who had lived through both joy and sorrow. Her engineering background had made her invaluable in coordinating the complex supply chain needed to support 15,000 refugees across interstellar distances. But it was her personal connection to the Vellani that drove her relentless dedication. "Zara, we have a problem with the water reclamation units on Deck 7, called out Marcus Webb, one of the younger engineers. His voice carried the slight panic of someone still learning to handle massive responsibility. "What kind of problem?" she asked, pulling up the ship's schematics on her tablet. "They're not calibrated for Vellani physiology. The mineral content they need is different from human requirements." Zara smiled, the expression carrying memories of long nights spent in research labs and intimate conversations about biological differences. "Actually, they are calibrated correctly. Thalani need higher concentrations of calcium and magnesium compounds. I had the specifications updated last week. Marcus looked confused. How do you know so much about Velani physiology? I thought first contact with them was only a few months ago. The question hung in the air, and Zara felt the familiar tightness in her chest that came whenever her past intersected with her present. Around them, the work continued, volunteers checking equipment, reviewing evacuation protocols, preparing for a journey that would take them further from Earth than any civilian rescue mission in history. It's a long story, she said finally. One I don't talk about much. But as the day wore on and the fleet's departure time approached, Zara found herself thinking more and more about Theron Veltar, the Velani scientist who had changed her life 7 years ago. She had been working as a xenobiology researcher on the Independent Science Station New Horizon when the Velani research vessel Song of Stars had suffered catastrophic engine failure near their position. The Velani were members of the Galactic Scientific Exchange, a loose confederation of peaceful species that shared knowledge and resources. First contact protocols existed, but they were rarely used since most species preferred to keep to themselves. Zara had been part of the team that responded to their distress call, and she'd never forgotten her first sight of Theron. The Velani were humanoid, but clearly alien, tall and graceful, with luminous skin that shifted color with their emotions, large eyes that seemed to hold depths of ancient wisdom, and voices that carried musical undertones, even in distress. Theron had been injured in the engine explosion, his left arm badly burned by exotic radiation. As the station's senior xenobiologist, Zara had worked around the clock to develop a treatment compatible with his unique physiology. For 3 weeks, as he recovered, they had talked. The Velani, she learned, experienced emotion differently from humans. Their feelings were deeper, more connected to the natural world around them. They formed bonds that lasted lifetimes, loved with an intensity that could span decades of separation, and grieved with a purity that could break hearts across species, barriers. Theron told her about his homeworld, vast gardens that bloomed in harmony with the seasons, cities that grew like living things from the landscape, art that captured the music of wind and water. He spoke of his work studying the quantum mechanics of consciousness, searching for the scientific basis of love and connection that his people took for granted. And somehow, in those long conversations about science and philosophy, about the nature of connection across the void of space, Zara had fallen in love with him. The feeling had been mutual. Theron's skin would shift to warm golden hues when she entered his medical bay, and his voice would take on even richer musical tones. When he spoke her name, it sounded like poetry. Zara of the clever hands and beautiful mind, he had called her. You heal not just bodies, but hearts that thought they were beyond repair. When the Song of Stars was repaired and ready to depart, they had faced an impossible choice. Theron's work with his people was vital. His research into consciousness was helping develop new forms of interspecies communication. Zara's position at New Horizon offered her the freedom to pursue xenobiology research that wouldn't be possible in more restrictive human institutions. They had promised to stay in communication, to find ways to meet again. But the galaxy was vast, and both of their peoples had restrictions on long-term interspecies relationships. The Velani worried about genetic compatibility and cultural contamination. Humans feared diplomatic complications and social prejudice. Their messages had grown less frequent over time, though they never stopped completely. Theron would send her recordings of new music from his homeworld, complex mathematical proofs that expressed emotions in ways words could not capture. She would share her research findings, discoveries about the biological basis of connection that seemed to validate everything the Velani believed about love, transcending physical boundaries. The last message she had received from him was 6 months ago, just a simple note saying he was working on something important, something that might change how species communicated across the galaxy. He had sounded excited, hopeful in a way she hadn't heard since their first meeting. Now she wondered if he had been on Andoris when the Korath attacked. If he was among the refugees fleeing through space, separated from everything he loved. If he was still alive, Zara? Naya Blackwood's voice broke through her reverie. The communications specialist had become the unofficial heart of their operation, the person everyone looked to for reassurance and direction. The fleet's ready to depart. Jackson's asking for final logistics confirmation. Zara looked around the cargo bay, now fully loaded and secured. 237 ships had answered the call. Everything from military surplus cruisers to converted civilian transports. It was the largest volunteer rescue fleet in human history, united by nothing more than the desire to help strangers in need. "We're as ready as we'll ever be," she said. "Tell him to signal the fleet." As they made their way to the bridge, Naya fell into step beside her. The younger woman had a glow about her that spoke of new love finding root in fertile ground. Her relationship with Jackson had blossomed during their weeks of preparation, their shared mission creating a foundation for something deeper. "You seem distracted," Naya observed. "Is everything okay?" Zara hesitated, then decided that if they were about to risk everything for love and connection, perhaps it was time to be honest about her own heart. "There's someone among the refugees I'm hoping to find. A Villani scientist named Theron Veltar. We had something special years ago." Naya's eyes widened with understanding. "You loved him. I still do. Distance doesn't change that. Not when the connection is real." Zara looked out through the bridge viewport at the assembled fleet. "I suppose that's why I pushed so hard to make this mission happen. It wasn't just about helping refugees. It was about the possibility of seeing him again." "Does he know you're coming?" "I've been trying to reach him through the communication networks you established, but there's been no response. Either his ship doesn't have the equipment, or ... double quotes, she didn't finish the sentence. In a war zone, there were too many reasons why someone might not respond to messages. Reached the bridge as Jackson was coordinating with the fleet commanders. The pilot had transformed over the past weeks, the haunted look in his eyes replaced by purpose and hope. Love, Zara reflected, was indeed a powerful force for healing. "All ships report ready for hyperspace jump," he announced. "Estimated travel time to the Kepler Nebula is 18 standard days. 18 days to cross half the galaxy. 18 days to wonder if the person she'd never stopped loving was still alive. 18 days to prepare for the possibility that she might finally hold Theron again, or learn that she was too late. Signal the fleet," Zara said, her voice steady despite the turmoil in her heart. "All ships, prepare for jump to hyperspace." The stars elongated into lines of light as the healing Dawn and her companions leaped into the void. Behind them lay the safety of human space. Ahead lay danger, uncertainty, and the possibility of reunion. As they hurtled through hyperspace toward their destiny, Zara allowed herself a moment of quiet hope. Somewhere in the dark between stars, refugees were clinging to life and love despite everything they had lost. And somewhere among them might be the Villani, who still held her heart, waiting for a miracle he didn't know was coming. The fleet carried medical supplies, refugee housing, and defensive weapons. But more than that, it carried something the Korath Empire couldn't understand or defeat, the power of beings who refused to let distance or danger stop them from protecting what they loved. In 18 days, they would learn if love was truly stronger than the forces trying to tear the galaxy apart. For now, all they could do was trust in the connection that had brought them together and race toward an uncertain reunion among the stars.